we have two incredible experts. I'm going to introduce them, then we'll pepper them with many questions and learn from their expertise. So first, Kristen is a business attorney who's committed to helping BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, and women entrepreneurs protect their work and themselves as their businesses and their impacts grow. She built her law practice, Herwitz Law, on paying it forward 8 years ago, reinvesting at least 10% of her profits into organizations that support women and social justice. Kristen is also a coach on AOF's free coaching hub, and she posts legal tips on her Instagram as well. Thank you so much for being with us, Kristen.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
And next, we have Kim Meckwood. Kim is the owner and inventor of Click and Carry, a unique bag handle carrying apparatus. She hails from a background of medical device and pharmaceutical sales and decided to make a major life change after the life-altering experience of being diagnosed with breast cancer. That journey through cancer gave her the faith and determination to quit her stable job and bring her really unique and very useful product to market. And since then, she has been featured on Shark Tank, Good Morning America, and QVC, just to name a few. Thank you so much for being here, Kim.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So what factors should a business owner consider when choosing the right legal structure for their business?
There are a few different things to think about. And from the legal side of things, I like to kind of break it down in terms of like, what is the actual or relative risk here? So as an example, someone who's kind of going into business to provide, some coaching to someone, maybe some executive coaching is a pretty common thing. And there are certainly things about it that carry some risk, but it's not one of those things where, someone is going to potentially die from the service or, that you're providing. And so with those folks, sometimes, you don't necessarily need to start right away with forming an LLC or corporation. It's something that, you might want to try it and see, do I actually want to stay in business for myself? Do I end up, kind of getting absorbed by someone else before you go through the cost and expense of forming some sort of business entity? When someone is opening a physical space where other people are going to be accessing that. So that could be a storefront, that could be welcoming folks into your home office for meetings. Certainly a fitness studio, it's a physical space and people are moving their bodies, possibly getting adjusted. You can see the relative levels of risk go up and up with that. Same for products. Is this something that someone is going to be putting in their body or on their body? That is going to be higher risk than a hair claw or some sort of product like that, which again, it's not that somebody's toddler couldn't swallow it or stab themselves with it, but the risk is a little less than something that people are putting on their skin or inside their bodies. Other things to think about is if you're towing the line with some sort of professional licensed service. So that would be, I'm talking to life coaches out there, could be some of the executive coaches that I talked about. It's certainly anyone in kind of the health and wellness space where maybe you're kind of towing a line with medical advice a little bit, or, you're providing some sort of kind of mental health support, but you're not a mental health professional. And so this is where we want to get really clear on, again, what are the relative risks involved from the legal side of things. And then you talk to the CPA who can assess what your financial situation is. Do you already have clients? Do you have multiple sources of income? A lot of small business owners start their businesses when they are still full-time or part-time employed. And so what is that runway going to look like? Are you trying to keep that full-time or part-time employment and also run your business? Or are you eventually trying to hop over and do your business full-time? Because what makes sense at the outset can change over time as your business grows. Or on the flip side, I have had a client who stepped away from their business a bit. They're still keeping it running, but they took a full-time position that they weren't expecting to have the opportunity to take. And so, but in 5 years, they want to step back to it. So then we talk about, okay, how do we ramp it down a little bit? In terms of Another consideration we often don't talk about, so it's not just the legal risk, it's not just the financial strategy around taxes and what's going to make sense for your CPA. It's also like, who are you as a person and how do you tolerate personal risk? Do you have assets like a home, a car, a savings account? Are you someone who just kind of flies by night and you're totally comfy with that? And you're like, I'm just going to try this out a little bit and see how it goes. Or are you someone where you feel like you need a little more security and certainty? And for a lot of my clients that I work with in my private practice, they tend to have multiple overlapping marginalized identities. So they are already navigating a world that doesn't feel safe for them because it's a Black queer woman, for example, who's got a lot of different things already stacked against her. And so for that situation, what is going to make sense is probably to set up a much safer, more firm container from the start so she doesn't have to worry if something goes wrong in her business and can just focus on what she actually loves doing and what she wants to put out in the world. And then, so that's like, do I form a business entity so that I take some of my personal risk off the table or so I reduce my taxes? And then it's what kind of business entity. So just by doing business, you formed a sole proprietor. You didn't do anything except sell a thing. You're already in business. You need a business license from your local county or city. If you want to formalize something either for the legal risks or for the tax strategy, then you can form, often small business owners will form a limited liability company. It's a easier, cheaper to form container for the risk in your business. You also have access to changing the tax classification. So if your business grows and you're making more than $50 or $80 or $100,000 a year, again, check in with your CPA because it might be time to shift from being taxed as a sole proprietorship. Again, you formed the LLC, but you're automatically taxed as a sole proprietorship. So you still get that lovely self-employment tax. It might be time to shift to an S Corp and start paying yourself, a salary, which doesn't have to be a fixed thing. It can be based on your monthly net revenue. But that's something to think about. If you are looking to get outside investor funding, set up a really kind of more complex structure, then a corporation may be something that is more appropriate for you. There are certainly preferences in the venture capital world and elsewhere for certain types of structures, and forming that in Delaware as an example. And so for that type of scenario where you're looking for outside funding from certain types of investor sources, you are going to want to do that in the way that that industry kind of expects it to go, and work with a law firm that supports, the startups that are looking for outside capital. Versus for me, I work with a lot of business owners who are getting going, moving slow but steady, and want to continue to stay involved in the day-to-day management. They're not going to hire, hundreds of employees. They might get to, 50. And so again, very different scenarios. There's not a one size fits all cookie cutter approach to choosing the business entity.
Kim, for your situation, I know you mentioned that you and your team ended up selecting the S Corp business structure. Can you share a little bit about why you chose that particular structure and how it's impacted your operations?
Sure. This is actually a very short answer. As Kristen mentioned earlier, I actually worked simultaneously with starting my business. It was just a side gig, but I did eventually want it to be my full-time position. So that's why I decided to go and become an S corporation, because I did want to pay myself a salary. And it has been actually 3 years that I've been doing Click and Carry full-time ever since my episode aired on Shark Tank. So that was my reasoning behind selecting an S corporation. And Paul, my accountant, knew that that was my goal. So it was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy.
This is going to have to be the end of our conversation today when it comes to legal considerations when starting a business, but I want to give the biggest possible thank you to Kim and to Kristen, to both of you, for sharing your time and your wisdom and your expertise with us.